It was the third Sunday in October 2025. I'd made Robert's favorite: pot roast, mashed potatoes, apple pie. David and Linda came over with the kids like they did most Sundays. Emma showed me her school project about butterflies. Noah wanted to help stir the gravy. Normal, comfortable, the way things had been for years. After dinner, after the pie, David said, "Mom, we need to talk about the house situation." I thought maybe the roof was leaking again, or the water heater needed replacing. "Linda's parents lost their apartment," he said. His voice was casual, like he was discussing the weather. "So we've decided they'll move in here with you." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Move in, here, with me. Decided? I set the fork down carefully. My hands were shaking. "This is my house, David." "I know, Mom, but you have 3 bedrooms. It's just you here. Linda's parents need help, and our place is too crowded with the kids." He shrugged. "It makes sense. It makes sense." As if it were a math problem. As if my home, the house Robert and I bought 43 years ago, were just square footage to be allocated. "How long would they be staying?" I asked quietly. "Just until they get back on their feet." He pulled out his phone and scrolled to his calendar. "They're moving their stuff next weekend." Next weekend. The words hit me like cold water. 13 days. He was giving me 13 days' notice about strangers moving into my home. I looked across the table at Linda. She wasn't meeting my eyes. Her face was flushed. She knew, they both knew this wasn't right. "David," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You didn't ask me." "I know it's a lot to process, but it's family, Mom. Linda's parents need us. They're elderly. They're on a fixed income. You understand that, right?" Family. The word he always used when he wanted something, when he'd needed money for college, when he'd asked me to co-sign his car loan, when he'd needed help with his house down payment. Family meant I was supposed to say yes. "They're moving next weekend?" I repeated. "You've already made plans?" "We had to move fast. Their landlord isn't renewing the lease. This solves everything. They get a place to stay, and you'll have company. You've said yourself how quiet it gets here." I had said that? Once? 2 years ago, right after Robert died, when the silence felt too heavy. But I'd learned to live with quiet. I'd learned to like it. This house was mine now, mine to be quiet in, mine to read in, mine to have coffee on the porch at 7 in the morning without worrying about anyone else. But David was looking at me with that expression, the one that said I was being difficult, that I was making a simple situation complicated. They left an hour later. David kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. Linda whispered, "I'm sorry." So quietly I almost didn't hear it. The kids hugged me goodbye, oblivious. I stood at the kitchen window watching their car disappear, down the street. The house was quiet again. The dinner dishes sat on the table. The apple pie, Robert's favorite, the one I'd made every Sunday for 40 years, sat half-eaten on the counter. I looked around my kitchen, my table, my chairs, my walls, the window where Robert used to stand every morning with his coffee, the counter where we'd rolled out cookie dough with David when he was Emma's age, my house. David thought he could just give it away, thought he could make decisions about my home, my space, my life, without asking, without even considering that I might say no. I sat down at the table. My coffee had gone cold. My hands were still shaking. 13 days, 12 years since Robert died. I'd lived alone in this house, our house, and it was mine now, not in a legal technicality way, mine in the way that mattered. I knew every creak in the floorboards. I knew which cabinet door stuck in humid weather. I knew where the morning sun hit the kitchen counter at 7:15. Robert and I bought this house in 1982. 3 bedrooms, ranch-style, quarter-acre lot in a quiet suburban neighborhood. We'd scraped together the down payment, 20% back when that was required. He'd worked overtime at the manufacturing plant. I'd taken on summer school classes for extra pay. We'd saved every penny, budgeted everything, dreamed about this place for 3 years before we could afford it. We'd raised David here. celebrated every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone in this living room. The house held 43 years of memories. Robert's voice in every room, his coffee mug still in the cabinet, his toolbox still in the garage. I couldn't bring myself to move them. Every morning at 7, I'd sit on the porch with my coffee, the same mug Robert gave me on our 20th anniversary. Steam rising, birds waking up, the neighborhood coming to life. It was my time, my peace. Tuesday mornings, I went to garden club. Thursday evenings, book club. Sunday afternoons, David and the kids came over. That was my routine, my life, and I liked it. My neighbor Marge came over at 7:30 the next morning. She'd lived next door for 20 years. We'd been widowed within 3 years of each other. She brought banana bread. She always knew when I was stressed. "You were up at 2 a.m., she said, setting the bread on the counter. "Saw your porch light on." "Couldn't sleep." "David," I poured her coffee. "He wants to move Linda's parents in. Here, with me." Marge set down her cup. "Did he ask you?" "He told me. Past tense. We've decided. They're moving their stuff next weekend." "Next weekend?" Marge's voice went up. "That's less than 2 weeks. 13 days. She sat down hard. "Oh, Maggie." That's what people had called me since I was 6 years old. Margaret at the bank, on legal documents to people who didn't know me, but Maggie to my friends, to Robert, to my students during my 30 years teaching elementary school. "What are you going to do?" Marge asked. I didn't know. I'd spent 42 years saying yes. To Robert, when he wanted to buy the boat we couldn't afford. To David, always to David. Over the years, I'd helped David more times than I could count. $22,000 for his college tuition when his father's life insurance fell short. $15,000 for the down payment on his first house. $8,000 when he lost his job in 2019. Co-signed 2 car loans. Paid for the kids' preschool tuition for 3 years. Another $12,000. I'd cashed out part of my retirement fund to help them. Total, over $60,000. I never asked for it back. He was my son. But this was different. This wasn't money. This was my home. He said it makes sense, I told Marge, that I have 3 bedrooms, that it's just me here. "It's your house," Marge said quietly. "Just you is enough." I looked around the kitchen, the table where David had done his homework, where Robert and I had paid bills and planned vacations and made every important decision together. I'd taught David to bake cookies at this counter, helped him with his science fair project at this table. This wasn't just space to be allocated. This was my life. But David was struggling. I knew that. He'd been laid off 3 times in 10 years, manufacturing jobs disappearing to automation, one after another. He'd gone back to school twice, racked up student loans. Linda worked part-time, but with 2 kids and a mortgage, they were barely making it. I understood his desperation. I did. But understanding someone's desperation doesn't mean surrendering your home. Linda's parents really do need help, I said. They're elderly, fixed income. Her father has health issues. That doesn't mean David gets to make this decision for you, Marge said. She squeezed my hand. "You know my daughter's a lawyer. Elder law. Want me to ask her to call you?" "I don't need a lawyer," I said automatically. "It's family." But even as I said it, I wondered. 6 months ago, David had asked about my estate plan. Asked if I'd thought about downsizing. Asked if I'd updated my will recently. At the time, I'd brushed it off as concern. Now I wondered if it had been reconnaissance. I'd always said yes to David, co-signing loans, down payments, babysitting every weekend so he and Linda could have time together. I'd been the safety net, the backup plan, the person he could count on to solve his problems. Maybe that's what good mothers did. Maybe that's what Robert would have wanted me to do. But Robert had made most of the big decisions when he was alive. The house, the cars, the finances. I'd gone along with it. That's how marriage worked for our generation. Maybe David saw that. Maybe he thought that's how family worked too. Make the decision. Expect compliance. When had my son started treating me like I didn't matter? That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house. The living room where we'd celebrated every Christmas, the kitchen where I'd taught David to bake cookies, the bedroom where Robert and I had made every major decision together. Every room told a story. My story, our story. Robert had planted the rose bushes 25 years ago. I'd kept them going, pruning, watering, talking to them like he used to. They bloomed every June, like clockwork. Our anniversary month. Evenings, I'd curl up in the living room with my mystery novels. Just me, a cup of tea, and silence. My sanctuary. The house felt safe then. Mine. But now David thought he could just give it away. Not legally, he didn't own it. Just because he assumed I'd let him. Because I always had. I stood at the kitchen window where Robert used to stand every morning. The neighborhood was dark, quiet, peaceful. This wasn't just a house. It was my life. And David thought he could decide how I lived it, where I lived it, who I lived it with. 13 days until strangers moved into my home. 13 days to figure out what to do. 13 days to find my voice and say the word I'd never learned to say. No. Monday morning, I went to my filing cabinet. The one in the spare bedroom, Robert's old office. I pulled out the folder labeled House Documents. The property deed sat on top. My name, Margaret Ann Thompson. Not David's, not Margaret and David, just mine. It had been transferred solely to me when Robert died, 15 years after we'd bought the place together. I called the bank, confirmed there was no mortgage. We'd paid it off in 2003. No liens, no outstanding debts. The house was mine, free and clear. But David was acting like that didn't matter, like my ownership was just a technicality he could work around. I tried calling him that afternoon. He answered on the fourth ring. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" "I've been thinking about Sunday," I said carefully, "about Linda's parents moving in." "Yeah, I know it's fast, but like I said, they need to be out by the end of the month." "David, this is my house." "I know that." His voice had an edge now, impatience. "But Mom, it's a big house. You've said yourself how lonely it gets. This way you'll have company. Linda's parents are nice people. You'll like them." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" He sighed like I was being difficult. "I thought you'd want to help family. After everything we've all been through, I thought you'd understand." There it was, the reframe. Suddenly, I was the one being unreasonable. Suddenly, this was about me not wanting to help, not about him making decisions without asking. "How long would they stay?" I asked again. "Just temporarily, until they figure things out." "David, that's not an answer. How long?" "I don't know, Mom. A few months? 6 months? Does it really matter?" It mattered. 6 months of strangers in my home. 6 months of giving up my routine, my peace, my space. 6 months that could easily become a year, 2 years, forever. "I need time to think about this," I said. "Think about what? Their family. This is what families do." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. Wednesday afternoon, David stopped by. He'd left his phone on my kitchen counter. Must have set it down when he was making coffee. He was in the bathroom when his phone lit up with a text. I wasn't snooping. It was right there, visible on the screen. "Linda. Are you sure your mom agreed to this? It seems like a lot to ask." I stared at the message. Then David's response appeared. "David. She'll come around. It's her house. She won't kick out family. Just give her time." My hands went cold. He knew. He knew I hadn't agreed. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't him assuming I'd said yes when I'd been unclear. He knew I hadn't agreed, and he was planning to proceed anyway. David came back into the kitchen, picked up his phone without looking at it, kissed my cheek, left. I stood at the counter for a long time after he was gone. That evening, I watered the rose bushes. My hands were shaking so badly, I spilled water over the edges of the pots. I kept thinking about the text. "She'll come around." Like I was a problem to be managed, like my home, my life, was something he could just take if he was patient enough. Thursday was book club. Carol was discussing the mystery's plot twist, the revelation that the trusted friend had been the villain all along. I couldn't focus. I'd barely read past chapter 3. My mind was elsewhere. "Maggie?" Carol touched my arm. "Are you okay?" "Fine," I said automatically. "Just tired." But Marge, sitting next to me, squeezed my hand. She knew I wasn't fine. Friday, I drove past David's house on my way home from the grocery store. Moving boxes were stacked in the garage. Real ones, not just talk. Linda's car was in the driveway. They were actually planning this. The boxes were real. The timeline was real. 2 weeks from Sunday's announcement, and they were already packing. I kept driving, went home, sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that went cold while I stared at nothing. Saturday morning, Marge came over. She brought banana bread again, sat down across from me without asking. "I saw you at book club," she said quietly. "You're not okay." "He knew," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant. David knew I hadn't agreed. I saw the text messages. He told Linda I'd come around, that I wouldn't kick out family. Marge set down her coffee cup hard. "Oh, Maggie. I don't know what to do." "Yes, you do." Marge pulled out her phone. "My daughter Sarah, the attorney? I'm calling her. You need legal advice." "It's family, Marge. I can't." "He's treating this like a business transaction. He made plans without your permission. He's pressuring you with deadlines. He knows you didn't agree and he's doing it anyway." Marge's voice was firm. "That's not family. That's something else." I looked at her. My friend for 20 years. The one who'd brought casseroles after Robert died. The one who'd sat with me through the worst of the grief. The one who knew me well enough to see when I was drowning. "Okay," I said quietly. "Call her." Marge texted her daughter right there at my kitchen table. 2 minutes later, her phone buzzed. "Sarah can see you Monday afternoon, 2 o'clock, her office downtown." Marge looked at me. "You don't have to let this happen, Maggie. You have rights. This is your home." "Your home, not David's, not anyone else's. Mine." I thought about the text message. "She'll come around." The casual certainty that I'd give in, that I always gave in. Maybe I needed help, real help. The kind that came with legal paperwork and clear boundaries. Maybe it was time to stop coming around. Sarah Chen's law office was in a downtown building with glass walls and modern furniture. Everything looked clean, organized, professional. Her assistant offered me water. I sat in a conference room with my folder of documents, feeling oddly out of place. Sarah came in at 2 o'clock exactly. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-40s, wearing a navy suit, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She shook my hand firmly. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Sarah Chen. Marge has told me a little about your situation. Why don't you start from the beginning?" I told her about Sunday dinner, about David's announcement, about the 13-day timeline and the text messages and the moving boxes in his garage. My voice stayed steady until I got to the part about the property deed, and then it wavered. Sarah listened without interrupting. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she reached for my folder. "May I see your documents?" I handed them over. She examined the property deed first, set it on the table between us. Her finger traced my name, Margaret Ann Thompson. "You are the sole legal owner," she said. Her voice was calm, matter of fact. "Your son has no legal right to move anyone into your home without your explicit permission, none whatsoever." "But it's family?" I said. "Linda's parents really do need help." "That may be true," Sarah looked at me directly, "but their need doesn't give your son the right to control your property. What he's doing, attempting to move third parties into your home, making plans without your consent, pressuring you with deadlines, this could constitute elder financial abuse." The words hit me like cold water. Elder financial abuse. "I'm not being abused," I said automatically. "David's he's desperate. He's trying to help his in-laws. Mrs. Thompson, Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. You own this house. You've lived there for 43 years. Your son announced, without asking, that other people would be moving in. When you questioned it, he pressured you. He knew you hadn't agreed, but he proceeded with plans anyway. He's treating your home as if he has the right to make decisions about it. That's a form of financial abuse, regardless of his intentions. I sat there looking at my property deed, the paper Robert and I had signed 43 years ago. We'd saved for years for that down payment, 20% down. He'd worked overtime at the plant. I'd taken on summer school classes for extra pay. We'd budgeted every penny, dreamed about this house, planned our future here. And now my son, the baby I'd rocked in that house, whose first steps I'd watched in that living room, thought he could just take it. Not legally through some trick. Just because he assumed I'd let him. Because I always had. Sarah pulled the deed toward her. This document is very clear. You have full ownership rights. Your son cannot legally move anyone in without your permission. And you have the right to say no. But what if I'm being selfish? The words came out before I could stop them. What if I'm choosing a house over family? You're not choosing a house over family. You're choosing to maintain boundaries over your own property and life. Sarah's voice was steady. Your son is asking you to give up your home, your peace, your routine, indefinitely, to solve a problem that isn't yours to solve. That's not a reasonable ask. And the way he's handling it, with pressure tactics and assumptions, that makes it worse. She pulled out my bank statements next. I'd brought 3 years' worth, like Marge had suggested. These show the pattern, Sarah said, pointing to the withdrawals I'd made over the years, the help I'd given David. $20,000 here for tuition, $15,000 for his house, $8,000 during his job loss. You've been financially supporting him for years. He needed help, and you gave it, generously. Sarah looked up. But that history of helping doesn't mean you owe him your house. In fact, it shows that you've already done more than most parents would. You have nothing to feel guilty about. I'd brought the screenshots of the text messages, the ones I'd photographed with my phone before David left that Wednesday. Sarah read them carefully. These are important, she said. They show he knew you hadn't agreed. This wasn't a miscommunication. He was planning to proceed regardless of your consent. That shows intent. She made notes, photographed the texts with her phone, asked me about the timeline, when he'd announced, when they were planning to move, how much notice I'd been given. 13 days from announcement to move in, she said. That's a pressure tactic. It doesn't give you time to think, to consult anyone to make an informed decision. It's designed to make you feel like you have no choice. She pulled out her laptop, typed for a moment, turned the screen toward me. This is the county assessor's website. Your property is currently valued at $385,000. That's a significant asset. What your son is asking for, indefinite access to that asset for third parties, that's not a small favor. That's a major financial decision, and he's making it without your input. $385,000. I'd never thought of the house in those terms. It was just home. But Sarah was right. It was an asset. My asset, my security, my inheritance for Emma and Noah someday, if I wanted it to be. Sarah closed her laptop. Mrs. Thompson, I want to be clear. You are not obligated to let anyone move into your home. Not family, not anyone. This is your property, your decision. And if your son proceeds without your permission, there are legal remedies available. Like what? We can send a cease and desist letter. It would formally state that you do not consent to anyone moving into your property, and that any attempt to do so would be considered trespassing. If necessary, we could pursue a restraining order, but I'd recommend starting with the letter. It establishes clear legal boundaries. A letter. Official. Legal. To my own son. I don't want to hurt him. I said quietly. "You're not hurting him. You're protecting yourself." Sarah's voice was kind, and sometimes protecting yourself means setting boundaries with people you love. I looked at the documents spread across the table, the deed, the bank statements, the text messages, the property valuation. Everything was so clear on paper, so black and white. My hands had stopped shaking. Sarah's calm voice, her clear explanations, validation felt like solid ground under my feet again. I'd been questioning myself for days, wondering if I was being unreasonable. But Sarah, a professional, someone who dealt with these situations, was telling me I had the right to say no. "What do I do next?" I asked. "I'll draft the cease and desist letter today. You can review it tomorrow, and if you approve, we'll send it via certified mail. That creates a legal record. After that, we'll wait to see how your son responds." She paused. "Mrs. Thompson, I should mention, some family members escalate when they receive legal documents. Be prepared for pushback, have support in place, and if you feel unsafe at any point, call me immediately." Unsafe. From my own son. The thought hadn't even occurred to me, but then again, 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have thought he'd try to take over my house either. I left Sarah's office at 3:30 with a folder full of copies. Everything documented, everything photographed, everything preserved. The cease and desist letter would be ready tomorrow. By Friday, David would receive it. Certified mail, signature required, and then everything would change. Saturday morning. 1 week before Linda's parents were supposed to move in. 7 days. I walked through my house differently that morning. Not with nostalgia, not with grief, with awareness. The living room where we'd celebrated every Christmas. I could still see the spot where we'd put the tree, always in the corner by the window so the lights would show from the street. Robert would spend an entire evening stringing lights while I made hot chocolate. David would hang ornaments, careful with the delicate ones, the ones that had been Robert's mother's. I remembered Thanksgiving 1995. David was 15. He'd helped me cook the turkey, his first time taking on a real task in the kitchen. Robert had carved. We'd laughed when the gravy came out lumpy. David had eaten 3 pieces of pie. The house had been warm, full, overflowing with family. When had that changed? When had my son gone from the boy who'd helped me cook to the man who'd announced, past tense, no discussion, that strangers would be living in my home? The kitchen where I'd taught him to bake cookies, the dining room where we'd eaten dinner last Sunday where he'd said, "We've decided," like my opinion didn't matter, like I didn't matter. I stood in the doorway of the master bedroom. Robert and I had made every important decision together in this room. Where to send David to college, whether to refinance the house, how to handle Robert's diagnosis, partners, equals. But after Robert died, I'd made decisions alone, slowly at first, where to have coffee in the morning, what to plant in the garden, then bigger things, how to spend my retirement, whether to keep teaching part-time, what to do with Robert's tools. For 12 years, I'd been learning how to make decisions by myself, learning how to be alone without being lonely, learning how to live in this house, our house, as just mine. And now David thought he could take that from me, not through force, through assumption, through expectation, through the belief that I'd always said yes. So why would I start saying no now? I sat on the edge of my bed, looked around the room. This was my space, my life, my home. The old interpretation, I'm being difficult. David needs help. Family takes care of family. I should be more generous. The new interpretation, David is trying to control my home. He didn't ask because he didn't want to hear no. He's treating my house like it's his to allocate, and that's not acceptable. I'd spent 40 years saying yes. Yes to Robert's decisions. Yes to David's requests. Yes to everyone who needed something. That's what good wives did. That's what good mothers did. That's what I'd been taught. But being good didn't mean giving everything away. Being kind didn't mean having no boundaries. Being family didn't mean surrendering your home. I picked up my phone, texted Sarah. "I've reviewed the letter. Please send it." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Will send via certified mail Monday morning. You're doing the right thing." Was I? I didn't know. But I knew this. I couldn't let David move people into my house. I couldn't live like that, tiptoeing around strangers, giving up my space, my routine, my peace. Not even for family, especially not when they hadn't asked. I looked up the number for a locksmith. Called. "I need my locks changed," I said. "Today, if possible." "We can have someone there by 2 o'clock. "Thank you." I hung up, sat there for a moment. David had keys to my house. He'd had them for 20 years, for emergencies, for when I went on vacation, for checking on things when I was out of town. But now those keys felt dangerous. He could let himself in. He could move people in while I was at garden club. Not anymore. The locksmith arrived at 2, a young man with a toolbox and a clipboard. He showed me the new deadbolt. Solid, heavy, secure. I watched him work. The old lock coming off, the one Robert had installed when we'd moved in, the sound of the drill, the smell of metal. The new lock going on, shiny, unfamiliar, mine. "How many copies of the key do you want?" the locksmith asked. I thought about it. Normally I would have said 3. 1 for me, 1 for David, 1 backup. "Just 1, I said. "You sure?" "Most people want a backup." "I'm sure." He handed me the key. It was heavy in my palm, cold, new. This key would only be mine, no one else's, not David's, not anyone's. "All set," the locksmith said. "New deadbolt, new key. Nobody's getting in without your permission." Without my permission. That's what this was about. Permission, consent, choice. David hadn't asked for permission. He'd assumed. He'd pressured. He'd planned. But he hadn't asked. After the locksmith left, I stood at my front door, put the new key in the lock, turned it, heard the solid click of the deadbolt sliding into place. My house, my door, my lock, my key. I stood in my living room that afternoon, new key in my hand. 43 years I'd lived here. Robert and I had built this life, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my son, take it from me. Monday morning, Sarah's email arrived. "Letter sent via certified mail. David will receive it tomorrow. Call me if you need anything." Tomorrow. By Tuesday afternoon, David would know that I'd gotten a lawyer, would know that I'd said no, would know that I'd changed the locks. Everything was about to change. David received the letter on Tuesday. I knew because my phone started ringing at 11:47 a.m., 5 calls in a row. I didn't answer. Then the text started. "Mom, what is this? A lawyer? I can't believe you'd do this to family. You're really choosing a house over your own grandchildren?" That last one made me sit down hard. The grandchildren. Of course he'd bring them into it. I didn't respond. Sarah had told me not to engage directly. Everything needed to go through her now. By Wednesday, Linda called. Her voice was quiet, shaky. "Maggie, I'm so sorry. I didn't know David was pressuring you like this. When he told me you'd agreed, I believed him. I should have called you myself to confirm." "You knew I hadn't agreed?" "Not until I read your lawyer's letter. David showed it to me last night." She paused. "We had a big fight. He said he was just trying to help, that you'd understand eventually. But Maggie, I told him, you have to ask people before you make plans about their homes. I'm so sorry." A crack in David's united front. Linda hadn't known, or maybe she'd suspected but hadn't pushed back. Either way, she was apologizing now. "Your parents really do need help," I said carefully. "I'm not heartless, Linda." "I know you're not. And honestly?" Her voice dropped. "I'm not sure moving them in with you was ever a good idea, but David got it in his head that this solved everything, and he doesn't always listen when someone says no." That was the most honest thing Linda had said to me in years. Thursday afternoon, my granddaughter Emma called, 8 years old, using her mother's phone. "Grandma? Daddy says you're mad at him." My heart sank. Oh, honey, I'm not mad at your daddy. He says you won't let Nana and Pop Pop stay at your house, but you have 3 bedrooms. I told him you have a guest room. Don't you want them to stay? How do you explain boundaries to an 8-year-old? How do you explain that sometimes adults need to say no, even to family, even when it seems like there's room? Emma, sweetheart, I love you very much, and I love your daddy, but grown-ups sometimes need to make decisions about their own homes. It doesn't mean I don't care about Nana and Pop Pop. Okay. She didn't sound convinced. Daddy seems really sad. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. This was what David was good at, making me feel like the villain, making everyone else feel like I was the one being unreasonable. Friday, David texted, "Can we meet, just to talk, no lawyers?" Against my better judgment, I agreed. Saturday morning at the coffee shop on Main Street. Neutral territory. He was already there when I arrived. He looked tired, thinner. He stood when I walked in but didn't try to hug me. "Mom, thanks for coming." I sat down, ordered tea, waited. "I know you're upset," he started, "and I get it. I should have asked you first. I was just trying to solve a problem, and I thought you'd want to help." By making decisions about my house without asking me? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, David? My voice was steady, calm. You announced that people were moving in. You set a date. You told Linda I'd agreed when I hadn't. How am I supposed to interpret that? He looked down at his coffee. It was just supposed to be temporary. 6 months, maybe, just until Linda's parents could get back on their feet. 6 months is a long time. I know, but Mom, they're desperate. Her dad's medical bills are piling up. They can't afford their rent. I was trying to help them, and I thought, you have the space. You're alone. Maybe it would be good for everyone. Good for everyone, except me. What if I'd said no, I asked. If you'd asked me first, and I'd said no, what would you have done? He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Probably tried to convince you. Exactly. I leaned forward. David, you didn't ask because you didn't want to hear no. You wanted to present it as a done deal so I'd feel like I couldn't refuse. That's not fair. That's not respectful. And it's not how family treats family. I'm sorry. His voice cracked slightly. I'm really sorry, Mom. Can we start over? Can we come up with a different plan? Maybe they could stay for just 6 months. I'd pay you rent, $500 a month. I'd help with groceries. We could set clear boundaries. $500 a month, clear boundaries, 6 months. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like compromise. But I'd heard temporary before. I'd heard just until before. And 6 months could easily become a year. 2 years, indefinite. I need to think about it, I said. Okay, that's fair. He reached across the table like he might touch my hand, then pulled back. Just think about it, please. I left the coffee shop feeling uncertain. Maybe I was being too hard on him. Maybe compromise was the answer. But then I remembered the text messages. She'll come around. The assumption, the pressure, the complete disregard for my feelings. No, this wasn't about compromise. This was about David learning he couldn't control my life. That afternoon, I spent an hour in the garden, deadheading the roses. Snip, breathe, snip, breathe. My therapist would have been proud. I was actually using the techniques she'd taught me, one stem at a time, one breath at a time. Monday morning, Linda sent an email, a long one, a detailed plan. Linda's parents would pay $500 a month. They'd buy their own groceries. They'd respect my schedule. They'd be gone by 6 months, she promised. She'd even attached a draft agreement. It was thoughtful, organized, everything I might have wanted if I'd agreed to this in the first place. But I hadn't agreed. And a detailed plan didn't change the fundamental problem. I didn't want strangers living in my house. I forwarded the email to Sarah. What do I do with this? She called me 20 minutes later. It's a negotiation tactic. They're trying to show they're being reasonable, so you look unreasonable if you refuse. Don't respond yet. She put so much work into it. I'm sure she did, but Maggie, you don't owe them your home, no matter how detailed the plan is. That night, I made Robert's pot roast, the recipe he'd perfected over 30 years, rosemary, red wine, slow cooked until it fell apart. The smell filled the house. For a moment, it felt like he was there, like I wasn't facing this alone. Tuesday, Sarah called again. I need to tell you something. David's hired an attorney. My stomach dropped. What? Michael Torres. He contacted me this morning. They're claiming that because David has had keys to your house for 20 years, because he's performed maintenance, because you've had a pattern of financial support, they're trying to argue adverse possession. What does that mean? It means they're claiming David has some legal right to the property based on years of access and care. It's a weak argument, but they're making it. They want mediation. Can they do that? They can try. It won't hold up. You've maintained clear ownership, paid all expenses, lived there continuously. But it means this is escalating. We'll need formal mediation. And Maggie, if they push further, you may need a restraining order. A restraining order. Against my own son. I hung up and sat at the kitchen table. My hands were shaking again. My chest felt tight. I couldn't catch my breath. At garden club the next day, Carol pulled me aside. Maggie, someone told me David's upset about the house situation. Is everything okay? So it was spreading. People were talking, judging. It's complicated, I said. Well, if you need anything. She squeezed my arm, but I could see the curiosity in her eyes, the speculation. Thursday night, book club was strained. 3 women asked carefully worded questions. How's David? Everything all right? We're here if you need to talk. I smiled, said I was fine. Came home exhausted. Friday, I went to the doctor for my regular checkup. Blood pressure was elevated. She asked if I was under stress. A bit, I admitted. Maggie, stress at our age, it's not good for your heart. Whatever's going on, you need to address it or manage it better. Are you sleeping? Not really. She prescribed medication for the blood pressure, suggested meditation, asked again if I wanted to talk. I left with a prescription and a warning. Reduce stress. What's going on? Saturday, Marge came over with a casserole. You're not eating enough, I can tell. She organized my legal documents with her label maker, color-coded, alphabetized. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. Just being there helped. Sunday, 3 weeks after David's initial announcement, Sarah called. Mediation is scheduled for Friday, 1 week from today. David's attorney wants to settle this without going to court. What do I need to do? Show up, bring all your documents. I'll handle the rest. She paused. Maggie, they're going to pressure you. They're going to make you feel guilty. Are you ready for that? Was I? I didn't know, but I knew this. I'd drawn a line, and I wasn't going to erase it now. I'm ready, I said. Sarah's law office, Friday afternoon, 2 o'clock. The conference room had glass walls and a long wooden table. Modern, professional. Nothing like my kitchen where this had started 3 weeks ago. I arrived first. Sarah was already there, organizing documents in neat stacks. Property deed, tax records, bank statements, timeline, text messages. Everything we'd gathered laid out methodically. How are you feeling? She asked. Nervous. That's normal. Remember, you don't have to negotiate. You don't have to compromise. You're here to establish boundaries, not to give in to pressure. She gestured to the chair at the head of the table. Sit here. This is your meeting. At 2:15, David arrived with his attorney. Michael Torres was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, carrying a leather briefcase and a yellow legal pad. He shook Sarah's hand, nodded to me. Mrs. Thompson? Mr. Torres. David sat across from me. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. Part of me wanted to reach across the table and smooth his hair like I used to when he was little. The other part remembered the text messages. She'll come around. Linda arrived 5 minutes later, apologizing for being late. She sat next to David but angled slightly toward me, like she wasn't sure which side she was on. Sarah started. Her voice was calm, professional. "Thank you all for coming. We're here to address Mr. David Thompson's request to move his wife's parents into Mrs. Margaret Thompson's home. Mrs. Thompson has declined this request. Mr. Thompson has challenged that decision. Let's begin by reviewing the facts." She placed the property deed in the center of the table. My name, Margaret Ann Thompson. Mrs. Thompson is the sole legal owner of 1247 Oakmont Drive. She has been the sole owner since 2011, when the property transferred to her following her husband's death. She has paid all property taxes, all maintenance costs, all utilities for the past 15 years. She lives there full-time. She has maintained continuous exclusive possession. Michael cleared his throat. My client doesn't dispute ownership. He's simply asking his mother to allow his wife's parents to stay temporarily. Without her permission, Sarah interrupted. Mr. Thompson announced this decision, set a move-in date, and began making arrangements before his mother agreed. That's not a request. That's attempted control. She slid the text messages across the table. David's words to Linda. "She'll come around. She won't kick out family." Michael looked at them, looked at David. Something shifted in his expression. These messages show Mr. Thompson knew his mother hadn't agreed. Sarah continued. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was a deliberate attempt to pressure Mrs. Thompson into accepting a situation she never consented to. David's face went red. I was trying to help my family by making decisions about someone else's home? Sarah's voice stayed level. Mrs. Thompson has helped you financially for over 20 years. That history of generosity doesn't entitle you to her property. She pulled out the bank statements, pointed to the withdrawals, the deposits, the pattern of support spanning 2 decades. Your mother has given you significant financial assistance over the years. She co-signed loans. She helped with education costs, housing costs, emergency funds. She did this willingly, out of love, but that doesn't mean she owes you her home. I wasn't asking for her home, David said. His voice cracked slightly. Just for her to help, one more time. By surrendering her space, her routine, her independence, indefinitely to people she doesn't know? Sarah shook her head. That's not a reasonable ask, Mr. Thompson, and the way you went about it, with pressure tactics and ultimatums, made it worse. I looked at my son, really looked at him. His hands were shaking. There were dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man at the end of his rope. David, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. When did you stop asking me what I wanted? He didn't answer. You announced that people were moving in. You set a date. You made plans. You never asked if I wanted this. You just assumed I'd go along with it. My voice was steady. I'd practiced this with Sarah. Why? Because I knew you'd say no, he said finally. The honesty hit like a slap. At least it was honest. So you didn't give me the choice. I thought if I just presented it as the solution, you'd see it made sense. You'd see they need help. That we all need help. His voice broke completely. Mom, I got laid off again 3 weeks ago. We're 2 months behind on the mortgage. Linda's parents are about to be evicted. I'm drowning here. And I thought maybe you could help us all, just this once. There it was. The truth, not malice, desperation. Linda put her hand on his arm. David, you should have told me. You should have told your mother. I was ashamed, he said quietly. I felt it then, the familiar pull, the instinct to fix it, to help, to say yes because he needed me to, the same instinct that had made me say yes for 42 years. But Sarah had told me, desperation doesn't grant rights. I'm sorry you're struggling, I said, and I meant it. But David, my house is mine. My life is mine. You don't get to make decisions about either one just because you're desperate. Michael closed his briefcase. I could see it in his posture. He knew they didn't have a case. "David," he said quietly, "we need to settle." "What does that mean?" David's voice was tight. "It means your mother has clear legal standing. The adverse possession argument won't hold. You've never paid property taxes, never paid for maintenance beyond occasional help, never had any formal agreement. You can't claim rights to the property." Michael looked at Sarah. "Your client is offering settlement terms?" Sarah nodded. "Mrs. Thompson will not allow anyone to move into her home. Mr. Thompson will return all keys to the property. Both parties will maintain respectful distance. No retaliation, no continued pressure. Mrs. Thompson reserves the right to seek a restraining order if harassment continues." "And if we don't agree," David asked, "then we file in court, and you lose." Michael's voice was blunt. "David, I told you this wasn't winnable. Your mother has every right to say no." The room was quiet. The air felt heavy. "Fine." David stood abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor. "Whatever. You win, Mom. You get to keep your house all to yourself. I hope it was worth it." He walked out. The glass door closed behind him with a soft click. Linda stayed seated. She looked at me, eyes wet. "I'm sorry, Maggie. I told him we should have asked you properly. I told him this wasn't right. He gets an idea in his head and he pushes. I should have pushed back harder." "You're pushing back now," I said gently. "Too late, probably." She wiped her eyes. "For what it's worth, my parents found a senior apartment through Catholic Charities. They're moving in next month. They'll be okay. We'll figure it out." She stood, squeezed my hand, left. Michael Torres gathered his papers. "Mrs. Thompson, for what it's worth, you did the right thing. It's hard to set boundaries with family, but it's necessary." He nodded to Sarah. "I'll send over the signed settlement agreement by Monday." Then it was just Sarah and me in the conference room, the document still on the table, the deed with my name, the proof that I'd stood my ground. When Michael closed his briefcase, signaling it was over, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, sad that it had come to this, but mostly I felt clear. I'd drawn a line, and it was the right line to draw. "You did well," Sarah said quietly. "Did I?" My voice sounded hollow. "He left angry." "He left because he didn't get what he wanted. That's not the same as you doing something wrong." Sarah started gathering the documents. "Give him time. He may come around, or he may not. But either way, you protected yourself. You protected your home. That matters." I looked at the empty chair where David had sat. My son. The boy I'd raised, the man I'd helped so many times, the person who'd tried to take my house without asking. "What do I do now?" I asked. "You go home," Sarah said. "You live your life, on your terms." On my terms. After 42 years of living on other people's terms, Robert's, David's, everyone who'd needed something from me, that sounded strange, foreign. But also, for the first time in weeks, it sounded like peace. The formal agreement arrived on Monday. Michael Torres had sent it via email, 2 pages, clearly worded. David would not attempt to move anyone into my property. He would return all keys. I would not seek a restraining order unless harassment continued. Both parties would maintain respectful distance. I signed it, scanned it, sent it back. Done. David returned the keys on Tuesday. Not to me. He dropped them at Sarah's office. I didn't see him. Maybe that was better. Maybe we both needed space. The first thing I did was change the alarm code. The house had always had a security system, but I'd rarely used it. Now I set it every night. The new code was Robert's birthday, something David would never guess. I met with an estate attorney that Thursday, a colleague of Sarah's. We created an irrevocable trust. The house would pass to Emma and Noah after my death. David couldn't contest it. I appointed a professional trustee to manage everything. Updated my healthcare proxy to Linda instead of David. change my financial power of attorney to Marge's daughter, the one who was also a lawyer. Everything was signed, notarized, filed with the court. Robert and I had built this house together. I wanted the grandchildren to have something from us, not taken while I'm alive, but given after I'm gone, on my terms. I also closed the joint savings account I'd shared with David, the one where I'd deposited money for emergencies, for help when he needed it. It had $1,200 in it. I moved it to a new account, in my name only. That felt strange, final, but necessary. From now on, I told Marge over coffee one morning, if David needs help, he asks, and I decide. No more automatic yes, no more blank checks. Marge smiled. Good for you. She'd been coming over every morning since the mediation. Same time, same porch, same coffee. We talk about the situation sometimes, but mostly we talked about roses. You know, she said that morning, watching you set boundaries with David, it made me think about my own daughter. She's been making decisions about my finances without asking me. Small things, but still. She stirred her coffee. I called her last week, told her it needed to stop. How did she take it? Not well, but it needed to be said. Marge looked at me. You taught me that. We're stronger than we think, aren't we? We are, I said. Sarah texted me 2 weeks after the mediation. How are you holding up? Okay, I wrote back. Some days are harder than others. She called instead of texting. I wanted to tell you something. My grandmother, the one whose photo is on my desk, she lost her house to my uncle when she was 75. He convinced her to put his name on the deed. Then he sold it out from under her. She spent her last years in a nursing home, confused about what had happened. That's why I do elder law. Your case reminded me why I chose this work. I'm sorry about your grandmother. So am I, but I'm glad I could help you. She paused. You protected yourself, Maggie, and you protected your son from himself. What he was doing, it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't healthy. Forcing him to face that was a gift, even if he can't see it yet. A gift. I'd never thought of it that way. Linda came by 2 weeks after the mediation, alone, no David, no kids. She sat on the porch with coffee. I wanted to thank you, she said quietly. For what? For modeling boundaries, for showing me it's okay to say no, even to family. She twisted her coffee cup in her hands. David and I are in counseling, marriage counseling. He's been controlling. About a lot of things. Not just with you, with me too. Small decisions, big decisions. I've been going along with it because that's easier than fighting. But watching you stand up to him, it made me realize I need to do the same. How's he taking it? Not well, but he's trying. The counselor says he learned these patterns from somewhere. Maybe from losing his dad young. Maybe from feeling like he had to be the man of the family before he was ready. I don't know, but we're working on it. She looked at me. My parents are in their new apartment. Catholic Charities helped us find it. It's small, but it's theirs. They're managing. We'll figure out the financial stuff, without taking your house. After she left, I sat on the porch for a long time. The afternoon sun was warm. The roses were blooming. The house was quiet. David hadn't contacted me directly. 3 weeks of silence. Linda sent photos of Emma and Noah sometimes, school pictures, soccer practice, birthday parties, but nothing from David. I didn't know if he was angry or ashamed or both. I didn't know if we'd ever have the relationship we'd had before. Maybe we wouldn't. Maybe that relationship had been built on me always saying yes, and now that the foundation had shifted, we needed to build something new. Or maybe we wouldn't build anything at all. Maybe this was it. That thought hurt, but it didn't break me. One evening, I took down some of the old family photos from the mantle, the ones from when David was little, the 3 of us together, Robert, me, David. Happy family. Those memories were real. They mattered, but they weren't the whole story. I put up newer photos instead. Emma and Noah from last Christmas, Marge and me at garden club, a photo from book club, all 6 of us laughing at something Carol had said. My life now, not just memories of what used to be. Book club that Thursday was different. Carol pulled me aside after we'd discussed the mystery, something about a missing inheritance and a wronged daughter. 3 of us are dealing with similar things, she said quietly. Adult children making demands, boundary issues. We've been talking about starting a second meeting, not book club, just support. For women like us who are learning to say no, would you be interested? Yes, I said, I would. 2 months after the mediation, a birthday card arrived. David's, handwriting on the envelope. Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't see it then, but I do now. I was scared, desperate. I thought I was solving a problem, but I was creating a bigger one. I thought you'd just go along with it, like you always did. I see now that wasn't respect. That was me taking advantage. I'm in counseling. Linda and I are working on things. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I hope someday we can talk. Really talk. I miss you. I miss the kids asking about Grandma. I'm sorry. David. I read it 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer for 2 days. When I finally responded, I kept it short. Thank you for apologizing. I'm open to talking when you're ready to truly listen. We'll take it slow. Mom. I didn't know what slow meant. Didn't know if David would call next week or next year, but the door wasn't closed. It was cracked. Just enough. Marge brought over a casserole that Saturday. Just because. Not because I was in crisis. Just because that's what friends do. You look better, she said. I feel better. Good. She smiled. You should. 6 months later, early spring. The kind of morning when you can smell the earth waking up. I planted a new rose bush that Saturday. Robert had always loved roses. He'd planted the original bushes 25 years ago, but this one was mine. I chose the variety myself, a pale yellow called Peace. I chose where to plant it, right by the porch steps where I'd see it every morning with my coffee. David had always said roses were too much work, too finicky, but Robert had loved them, and so did I. This one was mine to choose, mine to plant, mine to tend. I didn't ask anyone's permission. I didn't need to. The house felt different now, lighter. It was mine in a way it hadn't been before, not just legally but emotionally. I'd fought for it and I'd won. David and I text sometimes, short messages. How are you? Fine. He sent a birthday card in March. I sent one back for his in April. We're taking it slow, very slow. I don't know if we'll ever be close again the way we were before. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But I know this. If we rebuild our relationship, it'll be built on honesty, on boundaries, on mutual respect, not on me always saying yes. Linda brings Emma and Noah by once a month. We make cookies. They tell me about school. They don't ask why Daddy doesn't come. I'm grateful for that. My estate plan is solid. The house is in trust. It'll go to Emma and Noah someday when I'm gone. David can't contest it. That's not cruelty. That's protection. For them. For me. For the legacy Robert and I built together. I volunteer at the legal aid clinic once a month now. I sit with other seniors who are dealing with family financial pressure, adult children making demands, taking control. I share my story. I tell them, you have rights. Your home is yours. You can say no. 3 women have called lawyers after hearing me speak. That matters to me. Knowing I'm not just protecting myself, I'm helping others protect themselves too. Some days I still can't believe my son tried to take my house, but I'm here, in my home, on my terms, and I'm proud of that. Marge still comes over every morning at 7. We sit on the porch with our coffee. Some days we talk about David, about boundaries, about how hard it is to say no to people you love. Most days we just talk about roses, about the garden club plant sale, about Carol's new mystery novel recommendation. That friendship, that steady, quiet presence, It's meant more than I can say. Book club meets every Thursday. We still discuss mysteries, but now, on the second Thursday of each month, we also talk about boundaries, about saying no. 3 of us are dealing with similar situations, adult children who assume, who pressure, who take. We've learned we're not alone. We've learned we're stronger than we thought. My life looks almost exactly as it did before David's announcement. Almost, but not quite. I'm still me, still the woman who makes pot roast on Sundays, who tends the roses, who reads mystery novels in the evening. But I'm different too, stronger, clearer about what I will and won't accept. I'm 68 years old. I live alone in a 3-bedroom house, and I'm okay with that, more than okay. If you're listening to this and you're dealing with something similar, an adult child making demands, taking control, assuming they know what's best, I want you to hear me clearly. Your home is yours. Your money is yours. Your decisions are yours. It doesn't matter if they're struggling. It doesn't matter if they need help. Their need doesn't erase your rights. Their desperation doesn't grant them control over your life. Help if you want to. Help if you can. But help on your terms, with boundaries, with clear agreements. Not because you're afraid to say no, not because they pressure you, not because they assume you'll always give in. Family is important. I love my son. I always will. But family doesn't mean giving up everything. Family doesn't mean surrendering your home, your peace, your independence. If you need to, get a lawyer. I never thought I'd need one. But Sarah saved me. She validated me. She gave me the tools to protect myself. Don't be afraid to ask for professional help. It's not betraying your family. It's protecting yourself. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have let them move in, kept the peace, or drawn the line like I did? I don't know if I made the right choice. Some days I wonder. Some days I miss my son so much it hurts. But I know this. I made my choice. Not David's choice for me. Mine. I'm rebuilding my relationship with David, slowly, on new terms. I don't know if we'll ever be close again. I hope so. But if we're not, I'll survive. Because I'm living in my house, on my terms, with my boundaries intact. And that's enough.